welcome to the call. So this is our monthly subject to call. You're here to ask questions if you have any questions whatsoever, and feel free to hit the little hand raise button or the reaction button down there on the bottom, and give a little hand raise or just let us know if you've got any questions on this. I can let me ask you this: anybody coming on, please go ahead and mute because we don't want any background noise to be going on. Feel free to turn on your camera if you want to turn on your camera, but please go ahead and mute, and that way we don't have any background noise going on when the kids or the dogs or dog bells or whatever goes off. So, all right, good deal. So we are live. So my name is Roger Pascal, CEO of Subject to Institute. We are here to help you with your creative financing and what we've got working with that. We want to make sure that that you have the right answers out here. Roger Ketchum is on our call tonight. He has been a dear friend for 15 years, maybe more. I don't know, a long time. Older than some of our grandkids. I know that. But Roger is based out of the Bossier City, Shreveport area, and has done. Last I talked to you, it was a little over 100 sub 2's. Is that correct?
Yeah. We closed one just this week via mail, sub 2 deal number 109. Of course, that's over a 22-year stretch, so it's not that impressive, but it's still 109 sub 2's.
It is, and you do other investments too. You don't only do sub 2's; you do other things too.
Yeah. Subject to is obviously my favorite. If it even sniffs that we can get the deed, we're going to work toward that subject to. But yeah, subject to is just one of the 7 acquisition strategies that we employ and teach as well.
Very good. And so I know you moved from East Texas to Bossier City, Shreveport a few years ago. Mm-hmm. When you moved out there, how did you determine your market? How did you build that up for yourself?
Well, my wife and I originally are from Shreveport. We both went to the same high school together, so we knew the area really well. We were in East Texas for probably 10 or 15 years. When I was working at W2, it took us over there. And so I've always kind of been, at that time, I was active in East Texas and Northwest Louisiana. Once we moved back over to Northwest Louisiana, I was primarily focused on the Northwest Louisiana side, but over the years, we've had some really good commercial projects as well as really nice residential deals in the East Texas area. Matter of fact, I'm over in East Texas tonight. I drove over to Liberty City, kind of in between Kilgore and Longview and Tyler, at my son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter's house. So we just had dinner with them, and I think they've all taken off to go to Dairy Queen to get us a snack.
All right.
So if I do good here, I get my snack when I'm done.
Awesome.
But yeah,
awesome.
back to determining market. We just try our best to market and cast a broad net. Unfortunately, there's no way to market to subject to sellers that I found. So we just cast a broad net, and then as the calls come in and we gather the information, there's certain characteristics of a sub 2 deal that we look for when we glean that information from our sellers. And if it even sniffs like it could potentially be a sub 2, that's always our first offer. That acquisition strategy is try our best to get that deed. And, we've been successful 109 times.
There you go. So when you cast the broad net, are you doing that with a list that you're buying? Are you doing that with bandit signs, or how do you market for your properties?
Yeah, when I first started 22 years ago, I didn't do bandit signs. I've never done bandit signs, nothing against bandit signs, but I never really wanted to represent my company with the sign. If Hurricane Beryl comes in, I'm out of business. It blows my sign over. So I did postcard campaigns, and I learned I was a bit of a risk taker. I loaded my credit card up and did as many postcards as I could, about 50 cents a card. So I would mail to an entire zip code. And, there's a lot of waste, but you get 1 or 2 deals, and just the down payment on the sell side will completely pay off that debt. So we did postcards and billboards. We did billboards with Lamar. At that time they had a 2-week blitz. I could get 10 to 12 boards across Longview area, East Texas area, for 2 weeks for about $375 a board. And
Wow.
if no one came in and wanted that spot, well, then my paper would stay up. So that's how I started. I wanted to have a bigger box image, so we did postcards and billboards, and then we just kept. I mean, you have to continue to market. I mean, I just cannot stress that enough. No matter what, do not quit marketing. Wake up every day. What can I do to promote my business? And go to bed every night. What did I do to promote my business? Because it's always better if you can have motivated sellers calling you versus you calling them.
Right. Do you have bird dogs out, or do you have anybody in your team that's besides yourself that's actually going out and qualifying these properties before you get them?
You know, Roger, I've always been a one-man show. I'm super organized with my time and my desk. And so, yeah, I've just always been a one-man show. I do have an answering service that takes the calls from the sellers, and I have a script that my answering service has. And so the answering service fills out the script, emails it to me, and I know right away if it's a deal, what type of deal it is, and how to structure it just based on what's on that script. We call it our property information sheet or our seller intake form. So yeah, I do all that myself, and it's just, to me, it's just not that time consuming. We get in and we make a decision quick and have the conversation, and we either move forward or move on.
Very good. Very good. All right. So when you're making that first contact with a seller, you said you got that sheet, you qualify them. How quickly do you try to reach out to them, and what is that process?
Yeah, so again, we always work to get the seller to call us. I mean, there's nothing that will turn you off quicker to this business than cold calling a bunch of unmotivated sellers. And most of you guys know that. I mean, when you get a seller on the phone and you're cold calling them, regardless of how you found them, for sale by owner, bird dog, or subscribing to a list, no matter what you say, no matter how eloquently you say it, all the seller hears is, hey, I'm an investor. I'm here to steal your home. Even though that's not what you're saying, their defenses go up and your chances go down. So, when you get motivated sellers calling you, now you have call dynamics working on your side. It completely changes the dynamics of the conversation. So again, they'll call into the phone number that rings to our 24/7 answering service. The answering service will ask all the questions, and there's not very many. And then I get that sheet emailed to me. And so at my leisure, I can look at it. But typically, if it's a seller, I'm going to call them back relatively quickly. We just want to be really good with customer service and really not miss out on a deal. So I just go down the sheet and verify the information that they provided. And, a lot of people they stay focused on the numbers, but it's really not the numbers. I mean, yeah, the dollars will always dictate the deal, but the numbers is really not the telltale sign of a sub-2 deal. It's seller's situation and seller's motivation. And so we just ask, why are you selling such a lovely home as this? And then we just shut up and let them tell us what their situation is. And man, as you know, Roger, almost every time they will tell you exactly what they're looking for, what it's going to take to get the deal done. And then so we tailor that offer based on what they share with us. And that was a long answer, so I apologize.
Oh, you're good. You're good. It's perfect. Perfect answer. So once again, anybody on this call, if you got any questions, you can raise your hand, or even better, throw it in chat, and then we'll bring you on board. But I've got the chat window open, so I can see that. I can react to that pretty quickly. Sometimes if we get multiple people on here, it can be kind of hard to see if you've got your hand raised or whatever on that box. So good deal. Good deal. So you're getting it on paper, and when you're meeting with a customer, so you go. So what are you looking for when you're walking when you walk up to that house?
Well, typically on that first phone call, before we even go out, we try to pre-qualify them on the phone call. That way we're not going out and visiting every home, even though I used to do that a lot, because I was thinking, hey, if I get to meet them, hopefully I can kind of win them over just by being, friendly. But yeah, so whenever we have a potential sub-2 deal, and one of the key indicators, as you know, whenever they're asking prices, their payoff, they say, if we ask, the answering service asks, how much are you asking for the house? And they just say, I won't pay off. Well, that's a pretty good indicator that you may have a good subject-to deal. So whenever they're asking for payoff, there's really not any more negotiation that needs to be done. You're probably not going to buy the house any cheaper than payoff. So when we look at the house and walk through the house, we just, I look at up underneath the sinks and just the roof, obviously, and just make a quick pass through because we want to know what we're obligating ourselves to take over. We want to know, what kind of money we may or may not have to spend. And most of our sub 2 deals, as you guys know, fall into the pretty house category, so there's not a lot of work that sometimes there is, but usually there's not. Our acquisitions, and not all of our acquisitions, really fall into 2 categories. They're either physically distressed properties or financially distressed property owners. So most of our sub 2 sellers are financially distressed property owners. And they're just looking to rid themselves of the source of stress they associate with the property. And another key component is they're willing to, wanting to, or needing to completely walk away. So again, we just take the information from that sheet and then we digest it, give the seller a call and confirm it. And if everything looks good and sounds good on that call, well, then we'll make a field visit, look at the house and meet them. And just want to, again, take a look at the physical aspects of the house to kind of get an idea of what it will take, if anything, to get it ready to go.
Okay. So when you're doing that and you're making that offer, what kind of documents are you presenting to them?
And so I'm so non-traditional. I mean, honestly, this is probably horrible advice, but it's worked well for us. I mean, we've done 109 sub 2 deals in a little over 20 years. I do not take any documentation with me on my first visit. I just go and visit and meet, and we come to a verbal agreement. And then I say, hey, I'll email you a purchase and sale agreement. Then I come back and put that together. So, but thankfully I've never missed a deal because of that. I think it is very wise to go ahead and have everything there in front of you. It saves you a trip, it saves you an extra phone call, and it saves you the deal. Someone else may come in behind you and have the paperwork, and by the time you get back to the office and send them the paperwork, hey, someone else showed up after you and we signed. So that's probably not the best advice, but I've always done it that way, and just thank the Lord. The deal has always been around for us.
Very good, very good. So, So what do you try to do if the deal doesn't work? If maybe there's too many repairs for the property. We know, first of all, we know that the property's valued at whatever the loan is because the bank did an appraisal on it.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of if it's just a nasty house, or maybe they've had some storm damage, which does happen in your part of the country a lot. So how do you proceed with that? Do you kind of tell them that I can't make this work this way, but maybe there's another way you can make it work?
Yeah, so I can't think of a time that the physical condition of the property made it not a doable deal. We've always been fortunate enough. We always had an in-house contractor and our own crew. So if they were looking for some seller's equity, and some do, well, then we would use that seller's equity as an opportunity to negotiate possibly some of the repairs. And, of the 109 sub 2 deals that we've done, maybe 6 or 8 of them, there was actually some arrearage involved. So we had to send money in to get the loan reinstated. But a majority of them, they were current, and we just stepped right in, the next month or 2 months later and started making the payments. But yeah, back to the repair side, if there's enough equity in the deal and it needs some renovation work, whether it's major or minor, we just factor that in. And, does it still make dollar and cent sense for us to take over that debt, put some money into the property? Is there enough equity to do that and still cash flow? So, obviously that has to be part of the equation.
Absolutely. So, now a couple of years ago, you and I talked, and you had some questions regarding insurance. So how do you kind of handle the insurance now?
Yeah, well, so yeah, thank you for that. That was a big help. So, we brought our daughter-in-law on at the time, and she became our insurance liaison. So of the documents that we get signed, and I'll back up and kind of answer that real quickly. So once I get back to the office, I'll fill out a standard purchase and sale agreement, seller's property disclosure, and then your sub 2 addendum. I still use your sub 2 addendum today. I'm not sure if that's changed much, but I really like that document. So those are the first 3 things that I send to the seller, get them filled out, send it to the title company, let the title company begin their work, doing the title search and that sort of thing. And then once we close on the property, we get certain documents signed. I think there's 13 documents that we create when we create our land trust, because we buy everything in a trust. One of those is authorization to release information, trustee authorization, and trustee's limited power of attorney. And so those things give us the right to go in and cancel the current policy, reissue a policy in the name of the trust. And so Brittany, our insurance liaison, she would call our insurance provider, get a new DP3 policy on the property in the name of the trust, and then she would contact the mortgage company and send in the new policy. The old policy would get canceled. That refund check from the old policy comes to us, and so we get to sign that check, even though it's made out in the seller's name, because we have a limited power of attorney. So we get that refund and we put it in our bank. So yeah, we just work with our provider, swap out the insurance to the escrow companies, and keep moving forward.
Do you have one or two particular escrow companies or title companies that you use on a regular basis?
Yeah, here in Northwest Louisiana, we primarily have one, Baker Title and Abstract, Chris Baker. I met him at a luncheon. I joined one of these. It's like a BNI group, but it's not that fancy or that expensive. But man, he was investor friendly and just a friendly guy, and reasonable rates. And I'll say this: every attorney that I've ever worked for in the multiple states that we do business, every one of them, we had to educate the attorney on what a land trust was. They didn't know what a land trust was. They know about a living trust and a Massachusetts business trust, but they didn't know what a land trust was. And listen, guys, a lot of attorneys will tell you, oh, well, you can't do a land trust in this state. Basically, what they're saying is, I have no idea what a land trust is. And since I don't know what it is and I can't charge you for it, I'm going to tell you can't do it here. And that is not true. The land trust is legal and permissible in all 50 states. But Chris was just very friendly, and I was able to come in and talk to him about the land trust and how it works. We create all of our documents, send them to them once they do the title search. And then I used to go in there and close all my own deals using their table, just pass the document to the seller, explain to the seller what the document was that they were signing. But now Chris does all of that for us. So man, I tell you what, having a good title company and a good escrow company is probably the number one person that you need on your team. And we believe in having a team of professionals. We let the professionals do what they do. We're good at structuring deals and being a transaction engineer. Beyond that, we just engage the professionals. So everything we do is closed at a title company, filed and recorded at the respective clerk of court, and protects all parties involved and gives everyone peace of mind.
Awesome. So, so our last formal question is going to be, how do you handle post-closing? When you close that client, what does that process look like?
Well, I don't think I understand what you're asking.
So
me.
you're closing you go to the escrow company,
right.
You close it. Do you get the sellers out of the house immediately, or do you give them time to stay, or what is your process there?
Yeah. So what we've learned just through listening to people that have paved the road before us is we do not close until the seller is ready to give up possession. We've heard a couple of horror stories that the seller doesn't want to leave, and then when they're the owner of record or the prior owner of record, it's really hard to get them out. So we tell the sellers on the front end, hey, listen, we can close this as quickly as you like, or we can give you as much time as you need. And so we will schedule that closing based on when they're ready to give us possession. So typically at closing, we get possession at that point. We get the key. They've already moved out. There's been a couple times whenever we advanced a little bit of money to give them some money to move, but we've already had it under contract, and we felt comfortable doing that. So yeah, we don't close on anything unless we can get possession of it right then.
Awesome. Couple of questions we've got in the chat right now is Alan McKinney. You're asking, you're saying that tomorrow you're going to be talking to a homeowner, but the property obviously looks like it's listed with a realtor, and you're looking for guidance on that. So he's asking the best way to propose a structure to protect them from their concerns. Any guidance would be appreciated. But so do you ever work a deal that's a listed property in the MLS through a realtor?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we send out these blanket postcards to either an entire zip code, neighborhood, school district, area, town we want to do business. And sometimes those postcards fall into the mailbox of a home that's listed. A couple of times the seller, actually the owner of record, will actually give the information to their agent and have the agent call us. But yeah, so we've worked that before, and I'm gonna come back and answer that part of that question in just a second. But a lot of times we'll send a postcard, we don't get any response, and we feel like it's a pretty good opportunity. We'll send a letter, we don't get any response. Then we may text the homeowner. If we don't get any response, then we'll text or call the realtor, and we'll basically just tell the realtor this: hey, I serve as trustee of a large real estate trust. We're looking to buy houses in the area where this property is listed. If we can get your commission covered, would your seller entertain a creative offer? And then we let the seller or the real estate agent say, yeah, I think they would, or I don't know, let me ask, or no, they would not. And so, but we always let the seller know that, hey, if we can get your commission covered. So we take good care of our realtors, and guys, never shy away from realtors. Last year, we bought 16 assets, which really doesn't sound like a whole lot, but we don't do any wholesaling. Everything we look at, we buy. So we bought 16 assets last year. And again, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but that's one almost every 3 weeks. So that's a pretty robust buying regiment. And our average asset value was just under 200 grand. So we like quality assets in quality areas. But 12 of those, 75% of what we bought last year were realtor referrals. So we love realtors. We go and we have meetings at realtor broker offices. We'll bring in a bag of burgers in exchange for an opportunity to speak to the realtors and the broker and all their agents. And so when a realtor brings you a deal, it's either has seasoned on the market, nothing's happened, the activity has slowed, or there's nothing going on. They're about to lose the listing, it's about to expire. A number of there's possibly if they go on a call and the seller doesn't have enough equity to hire the agent, they don't have enough time for traditional sale, too many repairs, impending foreclosure, problem properties, pocket listings. There's a whole host of reasons that realtors will send deals to us, and then we pay the realtor. We take care of the realtor. So again, 75% of what we bought last year were realtor referrals. So that's a great professional service provider to have on your team.
Were any of those 12 subject twos, or were they other ways of picking those up?
Oh, I would say that of those 12, I think every one of them were subject twos.
Wow.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I could go back and look, but yeah, I want to say the last year of the 16 we bought, we had 14 subject twos and 2 seller finances.
Awesome. And so Alan's going to be talking to the realtor tomorrow. Okay. If you're going to go talk to the realtor, what would you say if it was a subject to? How would you explain that to a realtor? You mentioned a while ago about attorneys not knowing what a land trust is. Mm-hmm. Realtors are classic. If they don't understand it, their first words out of their mouth, "Oh, that's illegal. You can't do that because I didn't learn that in real estate school." Mm-hmm. So how do you combat that when a realtor's involved and they don't really understand how that structure of a subject to works?
Yeah, well, I've had a couple of attorneys and or realtors tell us before, well, you can't do subject to, that's illegal. And I'll tell them, hey guys, if you know what a HUD-1 is, that's a federal form. And I think I have these numbers right, Roger, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And I tell them, hey guys, look at line 203 and 503 on the HUD-1 form. It'll literally say on the HUD-1, loans taken subject to. It's on the federal form. It's not an illegal practice. It's very legal. It's just not a lot of people know about it. But so your question was, how do we talk to the realtor if it's sub to? Well, typically at this point, we don't know that it's a sub to deal. We're just engaging the realtor to see if their seller would potentially entertain a creative offer. Now, if the realtor says, yes, I think that they will, well, then there's 3 or 4 things that we're going to ask the realtor to provide for us so that we can evaluate it. And we'll say, hey, look, ideally what we need to know is their loan balance, their interest rate, and their payment, and is their loan current, and those can be perceived as pretty invasive questions. Well, why do you need to know that? I said, well, let's say that the seller has a house worth 150 and they owe 100. Well, now I know they got about 50 grand in equity. So sometimes it might make more sense for us to write a check for 50 for the equity and take over the loan that's in place. So that's the only reason we asked, to see if we can take those numbers and see if we can put together a couple of different creative ways that we can buy. So we have to get some information. We want to get that information for our sheet our property information sheet or our seller intake form. And again, that becomes our blueprint to buy. So based on what's on there, we'll kind of have an idea based on the numbers, but primarily the seller's situation and motivation. So if it looks like it could potentially be a sub-2 deal, we just tell the realtor, hey, listen, this may not be traditional for you or in your area, but we've acquired 109 assets in this manner. So what we'd like to propose is we just want to step in and take over that debt at 3.875% instead of going into debt at 7%. We'll write a check for the equity if there is any, and usually there's not, cover the realtor's commission and just take over that debt. So we'll just tell them very transparent, very basic language, what our goal is. We would rather have a no now. I'd much rather have a quick no than a slow yes. If it's not going to work, that's fine, guys. We're not offended by a no. Just tell me and we'll move on. But yeah, we just ask for some basic information on how much they owe, their interest rate, their payment, and then is their loan current. And if the realtor will help us get that, and a lot of times we'll tell the realtor, hey, we're happy to get on the phone with your seller and you can be on the phone with us and just let me get through this questionnaire. And then from there, we can potentially structure an offer. So everything is based on that property information sheet, that seller intake form, that blueprint to buy. And it's just a one-page form that I've created that's super simple for them to fill out and super simple to analyze and categorize.
Gotcha. So Van's asking, do his question, what list, if any, has been most fruitful? What type of marketing do you do to get the most success out of your marketing?
Yeah. So Mr. Van, I've never subscribed to a list. And this is why. This is a general rule of thumb, and I'm sure that you guys have heard this before, but the easier a house is to find, the more it's going to cost you. The easier a house is to find, the more it costs. And I say that because anyone can buy a list, whether it's a pre-foreclosure list or whatever out-of-town owner, and a lot of people do. So these poor sellers, I promise you, you're not the first person to contact them or call them. And so whenever you call them, whether you're second in line or 72nd in line, they're frustrated. They're tired of people like us calling them and bugging them. So we don't subscribe to a list at all. We just cast a wide net through postcards, talking with realtors. I encourage you to join your local RIA group and just tell people, hey, I'm in full acquisition mode. And whatever you got to do to get the word out. If you want motivated sellers calling you with houses for sale, you must first let them know you're in the house buying business. Then you get them calling you. And again, when they call you, they're looking for your help. They're hoping you can solve the problem. And it completely changes the dynamics of the conversation when they call you first and then you're returning their call. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. If not, I'm happy to take another shot at it.
Well, based on your postcards, where do you get those addresses from?
A couple of things. So in the past, what I've done, I use VistaPrint for all of our printed material, whether it's postcards, business cards, brochures, whatever we may be creating, the content that we put together. And so with VistaPrint, I'm just able to go in there and plug in a zip code, 71118, which is Southern Hills in Northwest Louisiana. And then I can pick out, I want houses 75 grand up, all the way up. And it'll give me 4,000 homes. And then I'll click on that and it'll tell me how much VistaPrint is going to charge me to send my postcard, because they have the artwork to all 4,000 addresses. And so that's going to cost me about $2,000. It's about 50 cents a postcard. So I get that. I just have VistaPrint do the mail for me. I don't sit there and try to hand address 4,000 postcards. They do it, they send it out, and then we start getting the calls come in. And so that's what we've done historically.
So do you primarily target that same area all the time, that your target areas, your how often do you reach out to those target areas?
When I first got started, and I would encourage you guys that are really getting started, do something like this, guys. Cast a big net. Now, it can get expensive to mail to an entire zip code, so that's the downside. But the upside is like that old slogan from that sitcom Cheers: everybody knows your name. Everyone in that zip code now knows who you are and that you're in business. So that's the upside to it. And so what was your question? Ask it again.
How often do you target that same same group of people?
So in my 22 years in business, I've probably targeted the same zip codes, 3 times maybe. And so in Northwest Louisiana, there's 9 zip codes that I choose to do business. There's some zip codes that I choose not to do business. We don't do business in any war zones. Again, we want quality assets in quality areas where people want to live and where people want to own. So, but when I first got started, I did the postcard campaign and the billboard campaign really hard. But now, if you'll do that just for a couple of years and be faithful and stay with it, before long, your name is going to be known. You're going to be known, and you're going to have deals coming to you. So now we have deals coming to us. The one that we closed on this week was a referral, a little small town, Homer, Louisiana, which happens to be my hometown. A ridiculous deal, guys. It's a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,900 square foot home, 3-level. It's worth $225 in excellent condition. It needs some work. It's an older home. Worth $225. She owed $41,000. Her payment's $385. I was able to buy that asset, taking over that $41,000 debt with a payment of $385 a month, and she wanted $10,000 in equity. So I bought it for $51,000, and I got her to finance the $10,000. We gave her $2,500 when she signed, $2,500 90 days, $2,500 90 days, and $2,500 90 days. So we actually put 2 strategies together, subject to and seller financing on the equity. So we acquired that $225,000 house for $10,000 out of pocket, took over the 41 at $385 a month. I've already got someone, I just put the signs up Friday. I've already got someone that wants to buy it from me on a rent to own for $110,000. So I'm selling it for about half price because it needs a lot of work. And they're going to give me $10,000 down and pay $1,295 a month. Wow. And so we'll make money off of it right off the bat. But again, I don't know if I answered your question. I get so sidetracked and I get so excited about this, guys. I talk fast anyway, so you have to learn to listen quick. But I talk fast anyway. But when it's something that I'm passionate about, boy, I really pick up my tempo a lot and completely forget the question. So.
Yeah, this business has been very good to both of us. So
yes, sir.
It's been a fun business to be in. So Van is wrapped it up with a question about the 1098s. How do you deal with that on your taxes? Do you take the deduction for the mortgage? Do you take a mortgage deduction on that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the documents that we have the seller sign, it's either the seller's affidavit or the seller's mortgage disclosure, and it basically says that that interest portion that we're now paying, that's our deduction now because we're making that payment. So yeah, we get all 1098s redirected to us. Typically, we just go into the portal and change the address so that the statement, everything comes to us. And so yeah, we'll absolutely send that to our CPA and take that interest portion deduction.
Awesome. So, quick question. What kind of industry were you in before you got into real estate?
I've had 2 careers outside of real estate, and I've kind of been in real estate for the past 22 years, just kind of on and off. I want to come back to that because I was about to take off on another tangent. But so I worked for a heavy industrial company. We worked on big, huge electric motors. Matter of fact, most of our clients came from East Texas, Texas Utilities Generating, Texas Utilities Mining, Eastman over in Longview. I mean, we're talking about big, huge motors. It'd be $100,000 just to fix one motor. It was about a $20 million a year facility that I worked at. And then I also worked about 15 years in the oil field as a safety guy. But man, I just always knew that I was capable of so much more. I'm the kind of guy, if you pay me $20 an hour, I'm going to give you $50 an hour worth of work. I was an overachiever at work. I just always knew I was capable of so much more. And then when I was introduced to real estate 22 years ago, I realized something about myself. Number one, I have this entrepreneur spirit. And number two, I'm a risk taker because I quit my job, didn't have any deals, but I knew I could do it. I quit my job with 3 young children at home. And I tell you what, if you want to succeed, back yourself in the corner. You're going to find a way to win. But I had 2 careers, one in heavy industry and one in the oil field.
Very good. Very good. So you're around people on both of them. This is a people business. Now we've got another question here. How do you handle a bank calling to accelerate the loan? They didn't like the subject to. How do you handle that?
Very good. I want to go back and say something you said about this being a people business. Guys, a long time ago, I went to work for a guy that owned an electric motor company in Shreveport. And he said this, and it made sense, and I've never forgot it, and it resonates to me. And I tell our students and clients this all the time. No matter who works for who, people do business with people. Therefore, everything is a relationship business. Guys, the best thing that you can have going for you in this business is your ability to meet people of diverse background, quickly build rapport, and gain their favor. Because in about 5 minutes, you're going to be asking them to give you their house. So no matter who works for whom, people do business with people. Therefore, everything is a relationship business. Always take the time to build a little bit of rapport. Just have a little bit of fun with them on the phone, and that helps. So the question was what?
How do you handle it if the bank calls to want it when they want to accelerate the loan?
I've actually had that happen. And so it was a local credit union, and we bought the deal from a wholesaler. Really good deal. It made dollar and cents for us to pay that wholesaler $5,000 to take this sub-2 deal. And they told me, hey, this is a local credit union. If they find out this thing has been moved into a trust, because we buy everything into a land trust. If they find out it's been moved into a trust, they're going to call the loan to us. I said, I ain't worried about that. I've been doing this for a long time, and they'll never do it. Well, sure enough, the bank saw on public record that the house went from this lady's name into a trust. Okay. And so they called the loan due. They called her and said, hey, we're about to accelerate the loan. And this was the attorney. So I spoke with the attorney representing the credit union. And I said, look, guys, I said, yeah, the seller put her property into trust under the Garn-St. Germain Act, the Federal Depository Institutions Act of 1982, which, as you guys know, allows a seller to place their property into trust for asset protection or estate planning without violating the due on sale clause. I said, that's all your client has done. They just moved their house into a trust. We don't care. We want it out of the trust. We don't believe in it. We don't know who you are. You're now making the payments. And so listen, guys, we could have fought that battle, and we probably could have won because she moved her house into her trust. What the bank didn't see is that she assigned the beneficial interest of the trust to us. So now the trust owns the property and we own the trust. But again, that's a whole nother topic of conversation. I know Roger's done a great job educating you guys on how the land trust works. But I could have fought that battle and I could have won. But listen, guys, there's a price to being right. I would have had to fight that battle, and I'd had to pay money, and it would have drug on. So this is what I did. I called the seller. I said, look, your bank is kind of being a little bit of a horse's rear, and that's okay. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to deed it from the trust back into your name. Okay. But then we're going to sign a lease. You're going to lease it to me for the amount of your payment with the option to buy it for the payoff. So we just signed a lease with an option, and we didn't file that. And I had her go ahead and sign another deed into trust. So we took it out of the trust. We still controlled it through the lease. Nothing changed on our end. I stayed there. My tenant stayed there. We kept making the payments. And then when my tenant, right before my tenant got qualified for their own financing to buy, we went ahead and filed that new trust, that new deed back into a land trust so that we could close it in the trust so that we could have the proceeds to us. So we just pulled a fast one on the bank, and we put it back in the seller's name and had the seller sign a lease for the same amount of money and another deed to trust that we just held in our file box until we're ready to close. And I hope that made sense.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Always looking at creative deals, how to handle that. Some banks, you're totally right. You just don't want to fight that battle. And you can go out and get 2 or 3 more deals in the time frame that you spend fighting those battles sometimes. That
is so true. And banks, most banks don't care as long as that loan is current. If the loan is current, the bank's not going to mess with you. Now, this credit union did, but they're just small town, and we had heard that they would. But the banks do not care. They're not going to they're having enough trouble with loans in default. They are not going to put a performing loan into default. I never thought it would happen to me, and I know very few people, if any, maybe one or two in my 20 years in the business that's happened to. I happen to be one of them. But they're just not going to call a performing loan due. They like owning loans, not real estate.
Van, I just put a link in there to the website. That's where the forms are at. Roger and I use pretty much the same forms. He's going to use in Texas. We use a TREC, which is Texas Real Estate Commission.
We use our same purchase and sale agreement. We don't use the TREC. We don't use the Louisiana form. We use the same form in every state, the same purchase agreement in every state. Send it to our title company, and the title company can look at it and figure out pretty easily what's going on. And again, most of those are subject to acquisitions.
Okay, we have other forms available online, so check those out.
Roger, really appreciate your time tonight.
And guys, I'll say this. Yeah, subject to, the reason we love subject to, obviously it's a free house. When I first heard about this 20 something years ago from one of my two mentors, Ron LeGrand, I thought, man, no one is going to give you a house. Guys, we've had 109 people give us houses. Now, only about 6 or 8 of those did we actually have to write a check to reinstate the loan. The biggest check we ever wrote was $42,000. The guy was behind. But after sending $42,000 to the bank that we got from one of our private lenders, everything we do is privately funded. And so we sent $42,000 to the bank. And when we did that, it got it current. And the first lien then was $125,000, 125 plus the 42. So we're into it for $167, but it had a value of $279.9. And so it made dollar and cent sense for us to go ahead and reinstate that loan through the private lender. But a majority of them, guys, it's literally a free house. The only thing it costs us to buy it is our closing costs, which it cost me $890 to acquire an asset subject to through our current title company and escrow company.
Very good. Very good. Have you ever, let me just ask this question because it happens to me, or it has happened to me. Have you ever had a client come back not really understanding how the deal worked, and they come back and say, "Wow, the house is worth a lot more money now than it was"? You know how do you normally handle that?
You were asking about if we've ever had a client come back.
Yeah, client come back.
Yeah.
And I want all this equity back.
Yeah. So we did have that happen one time. We had a client do a sub 2 with a competitor. And then she signed it over to this competitor. He took it subject to, he leased it out. And the first 2 lease payments he got from his tenant, he didn't make the underlying payment. So that's, guys, listen, morally and ethically, guys, we got to make the payment. Listen, if we don't make the payment, it doesn't affect our credit, it affects theirs. But we told them we were going to make the payment, guys. You got to make that payment or we're going to be regulated right out of business. Plus, if we don't make the payment, we lose our assets. So, but anyway, he didn't make the payment for the first 2. Now she's behind 2. So somehow she got my name through a referral and she asked me if I could come in and take over. So I called the competitor. I didn't know him and said, "Hey man, you're not doing the right thing. The seller wants me to take over this." So I took it over and had her re-sign my paperwork. Well, a couple of years later, she said, "Hey, when I was working with this first guy, he said he would have it out of my name in 3 years. It's been 3 years now. I either need it out of my name or I want it back." And so I kind of had a little bit of a battle with her. I said, "Well, that was the understanding you had with that guy. With me, we did not have that understanding." But yeah, she even showed up at my office. She was really, really angry, and she showed up at my office, and I talked her down a little bit, but then she wouldn't leave. So obviously I had to call the sheriff's department and get them to, help her out the door. I mean, she wasn't belligerent, but she didn't know what she had done. And I kind of stepped into that mess, but hey, it turned out to be a really good asset for us.
There you go. There you go. So Alan's got one last question here.
Yes.
And he's asking, when you're negotiating a deal through a realtor or that a realtor is involved, do you ask the realtor to take a reduction on their 3% commission?
Yeah, we don't, we don't because we love taking care of our realtors, but we will tell the realtor, "Hey, if we can get your commission covered." And so when we say get that commission covered, I'll let them know right away, "Hey, we're going to pay you 3%. We're not paying the full 6%. We're going to pay you 3%. Depending on the situation, if it's been on the market for a while and the showings have slowed, maybe this is the second or third time that it's been relisted. Sometimes, it's rare that we'll do this, but sometimes we'll ask, "Hey, instead of a $8,000 commission, how does 6,000 sound just to get this deal done?" But yeah, typically we'll just cover that 3%. But we do the same thing whenever a realtor brings us a buyer when we're selling an asset. If they bring us a buyer that qualifies for our rent to own or our in-house financing, we'll pay that realtor 3%. We'll say, "Hey, we're going to give you 20% of every dollar we bring in up to a full 3% commission. If I get $10,000 down, you get 2. And so if I'm owe you $5,000 a commission, I'm paying you 2 and now I owe you 3. So they get paid the way that I get paid. And so you can structure it that way. Hey, as soon as I get this house sold, I can cover your commission at that time. So You're only limited, guys, by how creatively you can think. It never hurts to ask the question. The worst thing they can do is say no.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have one last question is that do you mostly wrap around loans and to the end buyer? Do you mostly do wrap around loans to the end buyer?
That's something that we rarely ever do. A wrap is kind of the slang word. It's more in Louisiana, it's an all-inclusive mortgage. In Texas, all-inclusive deed of trust. But yeah, it's rare that we do that. Matter of fact, that's a form of seller financing. And one of the things that I've been fortunate enough to do is serve as a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the Seller Finance Coalition. Because when Dodd-Frank came down in 2012, it limits people like us, the small private investor. We can only owner finance 3 a year. After that, we have to send our buyers through an RMLO, a registered mortgage lending originator. So what we've learned to do is we've completely circumvented Dodd-Frank. Instead of owner financing the property, since we own it in a trust, we will owner finance the beneficial interest of the trust. And one of the cool things about a trust, it converts real property into personal property. It converts real estate into beneficial interest. So now we're not financing real estate. We're financing beneficial interest. We're financing personal property. And so now we're outside the purview of Dodd-Frank. So we do that with an installment sale contract. And we typically do 9.875% on a 40-year mortgage. 40-year brings the payment down a little bit more for the buyer. But for us guys, that's 10 more years of really, really nice interest. And it's awful good to be the bank. So instead of doing a wrap, instead of doing a traditional owner finance, because we can only do 3 a year, then we have to send our buyer to an RMLO that adds time and expense to the buyer. We've just learned to sell the beneficial interest of personal property instead of owner financing the real property. And again, we do that on an installment sale contract, just like you would have on a vehicle. And now, since we haven't given them the deed, if they fail to perform, we don't have to foreclose. We just evict.
So how do you handle the homestead exemption they may have on their property?
They can still go down because of the contract that we provide. They can still go down and they can file for homestead exemption because we're showing them that they're buying the beneficial interest of the trust, and the trust is on that public record, or it's on public record that the asset's held in a trust. So we haven't had any problem. They'll just go down to the clerk's office and say, I'm buying a home owner financing, it's in a trust. I'm buying the beneficial interest. I want to file for homestead exemption. And so far in Louisiana and Texas and Arkansas, we have not had any issue with that. So they can still file for homestead exemption and get that exemption. And if they itemize their taxes, we'll have our CPA send them a 1098 at the end of the year based on the interest that they're paying us.
Very good. Very good. Awesome. All right, Roger, thank you so much for being on here tonight. Hopefully your Dairy Queen ice cream hasn't melted. And
it's even better. When it gets a little soft, it's even better.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're not traditional real estate minded investors, guys. We don't buy it, retail, and rent. That requires 20% down, your cash outlay. That requires you signing for the debt, your personal promise to pay. That ties up your credit, limiting your play. We're creative real estate experts. My mantra is creative real estate, creative deal structuring, creative financing creates wealth. One thing that we preach and teach, you can create wealth without creating debt using this model. I mean, all these sub-2 deals, guys, we're not going into debt. We're just taking over existing debt, usually at 2, 3, 4, 5%. We took over one a few months ago, 1.25%.
Oh my gosh.
1.2. The payment on this $135,000 house is $421 a month.
Wow.
1.25.
Wow. That's crazy. That is crazy. Well, good deal. Well, Roger, once again, thank you so much for being on this call tonight.
My pleasure.
Look forward to seeing you next time. And
thank you.
Good luck in Little Rock, Hot Springs, and Tulsa.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right,
it's my pleasure. Look forward to seeing y'all again soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks everybody for being on here tonight. We'll see you. We normally try to do this the last Wednesday of the month. We ran into a little challenge last month, but we're still scheduling for the last Wednesday of July. So hopefully y'all can be on here again. And Roger, thank you so much for being on here and giving us that great information.
My pleasure, guys. See you later.
Good deal. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.